Hello, and welcome to another episode of Anomalies. Um, I sometimes wonder how to explain what this show is all about. To me, it's kind of like you're going down a straight and narrow path, and then there's a twist and turn that you decide to take, and that twist and turn is hugely entertaining and mysterious, and you never thought it would be this mysterious. But that's how I see the program. We're fortunate to have a repeat guest. I always like it when guests are willing to come back, and this guest in particular um, was very gracious in coming back. Today we have Dr. Natalie Candela, and Natalie has a PhD, and she's also a certified hypnotherapist. But Natalie, I'm going to ask you to give a plug for something that both you and I were involved in. Talk a little bit about Opus, because I think that's kind of related to something we might talk about today.
So my and I always forget exactly what the acronym stands for. Organization for, or can you say what OPUS stands for?
Yeah, the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support.
There we go. Thank you. So I have been involved in OPUS for a few months now, I think, and the part that I am involved in is a support group, support for the experiencers. So I get to connect with people that are seeking support and just have conversations with them. We have a few resources that we offer, such as um, reading, books and publications that we suggest. Also, support groups and chat groups for people that want to be involved in those. But what my sort of job is within the group is to talk to people when they ask for one-on-one conversation. Just listen to their stories, offer perhaps a different perspective or a new perspective, and mostly just to tell them that they're not crazy. What they're experiencing has validity. Um, to give them a perspective that it's not an isolated event and that so many people are experiencing things like that. Um, my background in hypnotherapy and the regressions that I do with experiencers also gives me some insight into sort of some patterns that I'm seeing with these events. And so when appropriate, I share with people what I know, what I have learned through my work. But I don't talk to them as a hypnotherapist. I just talk as um, a supporting individual. So there are maybe about 7 or 8 of us in the group that handle these calls when they come in. Um, and it's really a beautiful experience to help others when they feel like they are alone in with these experiences.
Right. I think that's one of the most important functions that I have in dealing with Opus experiencers, and that's just to listen to them and not
Mhm.
say you're a whack job, because I think a lot of people, when they have strange experiences, they're real hesitant to share those experiences. So Opus does good things. Well, let's move on now to hypnosis. Uh, so, how would you describe? I mean, I have my own view of hypnosis. I think I was hypnotized once, maybe, but that's kind of a fuzzy memory for me. What, how would you describe hypnosis?
I describe hypnosis as a state of deep relaxation combined with hyperfocus. So many people view it mistakenly as some sort of state of unconsciousness or sleep. It's neither one of those. It's similar when you experience it, it's similar to a state of deep meditation
Hmm.
when you are able to sort of be in a state of observation and just focus on what's coming, the information that's coming to you or experiences that come to you. But yet you're deeply relaxed. You're not doing anything. You're not focused externally on, what I'm going to do for dinner or where my kids are.
Yeah.
It's just a very focused state that's combined with deep relaxation. So that's
Hmm.
hypnosis. It's a state where we step out of our conscious level of thinking. So we shift, the brain waves actually shift their frequency. And so we step out of that state of awareness where we're externally focused and we are action focused. Um, but there's still a conscious awareness there because you don't want to be asleep. If you're asleep, then you are not, for people who meditate, they know that if they fall asleep, they're not meditating. And the same way, if you fall asleep, you are not, excuse me, you're not in a trance. You're not in hypnosis. You're asleep. So one thing that I always talk to people about, especially before I do regressions, is don't be tricked by the thought that you will have, well, I'm aware of what's happening, so therefore I'm not hypnotized. That is not at all true. It's the same, I would say, like in a meditation, it's that thought, well, I'm aware of what's happening, therefore I'm not meditating. It,
Hmm.
it's not true. You are going to be aware of what's happening because you have to be conscious to some extent. If you're unconscious, you're not in hypnosis. Um, so conscious mind is always present in conscious awareness is always present in hypnosis, but you are in a different, you're operating, your brain is operating at a different brainwave frequency. So it's just a very, usually it's a very comforting, relaxing experience.
So a couple of questions that always seem to come up with hypnosis. One question would be, can anybody be hypnotized? Or there are some people that are resistant to that.
The answer is yes and yes.
Yeah, okay, yes and yes.
uh, yes, everybody can be hypnotized. In fact, if you ask, can anybody go into a trance? Absolutely. In fact, we all go into trance on a daily basis. So anytime, because it's just a shift in frequency of, a shift in focus, a shift in um, the state of concentration. So we all experience it on a daily basis. So some of the examples that are very common, anytime you zone out for a minute and you kind of lose, you know, lose time. I don't mean lose time as in with alien experiences,
Missing time, yeah.
right? But as in, you were driving on a highway and you thought you were, your exit was coming up in, I don't know, 5 minutes, and all of a sudden it's right there, and oh, how did I get there? It's already here. And because you kind of just zoned out, you were thinking about something else. You were in a trance because a trance takes you kind of out of time. Because again, you shift your brainwave frequency. Another example is when you're just daydreaming. When you're sitting somewhere and you're so bored with something else, you kind of go into your own story. That's a trance. You're just kind of traveling. You're having an imagery journey in your mind, which is very much a part of hypnotherapy, for example. Another example is anytime you wake up or fall asleep, you go through a trance state. So
Hmm.
those of us that sleep experience trance. And one of the examples of that maybe if you ever have felt that you were so tired that you just wanted to put your head down, close your eyes, and drift away and fall asleep. And when you do that, you begin to feel yourself relaxing immediately. Just feel yourself going deeper and deeper immediately. But you're still aware of it, right? You're consciously, it's almost like consciously you're thinking, okay, there I go, I'm drifting off to sleep. That state is the state of trance. That is a hypnotic state. It's that conscious awareness of what's happening to you, combined yet with sort of just drifting off and letting it happen. So that is a typical trance state. So everyone is capable of it. There are people who are more suggestible and people who are less suggestible. The suggestibility can depend on a number of factors. Some of them are underlying mistrust, fear, and inability to just go, with the process. Sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's unconscious. I had a client once who was so afraid. He actually came in for a regression. He had some alien experiences and he came in to learn more about those experiences. But when he came in, I found out that he was so afraid of dealing with them again that he refused to even close his eyes because he didn't want to allow anything to happen. And I mean, if you don't close your eyes, what happens is that you're bombarded with external stimuli, right? You're focused outwardly. So it's hard for you. It's like doing a meditation while sitting at a playground and watching kids play. It's just too much happening. But what it tells you also that when a person is afraid to close their eyes, that they have so much fear, they're gonna resist everything. And hypnosis is not an overpowering of a person, right? Hypnosis is a collaboration. I serve as a guide, so it's like a tour guide. You have to be willing to get on the bus,
right,
and ride around with me. And then while you're riding, I will guide you and I will point things out to you and I will help you get, information. But if you don't want to get on the bus, I can't drag you on.
right.
So, yes, everybody's able to be hypnotized, but there are certain things that can make some people more susceptible to it and others less susceptible.
So another thing, and I think this, can anybody be hypnotized, is part of what I want to ask. So there are some misconceptions about hypnotism. So that would be the first one, that certain people can't be hypnotized. The second one, and this kind of comes from situations where people have been in sometimes in an audience during a stage show, and they have people come up on stage and they hypnotize them, and then they ask them to do strange things like, act like you're a chicken or something like that. So can you be made to do things? The question is, can you be made to do things under hypnosis that you wouldn't want to do if you were totally awake?
So the main thing to know is hypnosis is a collaboration. It can only be successful if the person being hypnotized is willing to go along with it.
Mhm.
If there is something that they are morally opposed to, or, just fully do not wish to participate in, they will always have the power to resist it. Hypnosis is not an overpowerment of something. Now, stage hypnosis is different from hypnotherapy, right? Of course, it does not have any therapeutic component to it, and that's why it's not hypnotherapy. And also, it's basically entertainment. The purpose of it is to amuse. And how do we get amused? We get amused by watching people seemingly do things they wouldn't normally do. But how stage hypnosis works is that there are certain ways that um, a hypnotist can tell the level of suggestibility of a person.
Hmm.
So before they call people onto the stage, they talk to people and they give subtle suggestions, maybe, or commands, instructions. And what they're looking for is to see who is immediately following them.
Yeah, who's gonna follow
Be-
that? Makes
right,
sense.
because some people are very highly suggestible. Like if I say, for example, oh my goodness, it's really hot today, isn't it? And you're going to start taking unzipping your jacket and whatever,
Yeah.
because just me saying it,
Mhm.
you just accepted it and you start feeling it. I'm not really forcing you to do anything. I'm just making a suggestion, but some people would just that's how little it takes, right?
Mhm.
So before bringing people on stage, a hypnotist would make statements like that, and they are watching for people that are the most suggestible, and they're going to bring them out. Now, they still have very little time to discern who's highly suggestible, and that's why even when they bring people out, there are some that are going to resist the suggestions, but they have a much higher percentage they pull out the highest percentage of people that are going to follow their suggestions. Now, the reason they're following them because they're kind of ready. They're willing to go along with it. Those that are not, all they have to think in their mind is, no, I'm not a chicken. No, I'm not going to do it. Right. So
Yeah,
they are not being controlled against their will. They are participants in it.
as an old political science teacher, I guess this conversation reminds me of the suggestibility of the average voter and how they can be talked into believing something
Mhm.
or not believing something. Similar kind of thing, you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of us are, you know, a lot of the things that we do, we kind of do in a trance. We sort of just go along with it. That's why critical thinking is very important in life, because
Very,
you don't want to just say, oh yeah, this must be true. You have to sort of critically analyze things. That's why we have our conscious thinking. And when we are not in a trance, we should use our conscious thinking. But yeah, and especially so we are pretty suggestible. I mean, many of us are suggestible throughout our lives, but we are the most suggestible, all of us, when we are uh, children in our infancy, and actually from birth to maybe about 7 or 8 years old, because this is when we say that our minds get programmed. I mean, they literally are. This is where we absorb whatever we observe because we are in a perfect trance. Children are constantly in a hypnotic state. They
hmm,
don't have a conscious mind developed yet. They don't have the rational thinking that begins to filter out facts and fiction. You tell them that there's Santa Claus that's going to drop off presents, and they're saying, of course,
yeah. When does
they
he show up?
right. And that's because they are in a trance.
Hmm.
So that is a hypnotic state. That's why they can learn a language just by listening to it. They are highly suggestible. We are all highly suggestible when we're children because we don't have that rational filter yet. And so whatever is presented to us, we just absorb.
Hmm. I guess I'm thinking of some kind of nefarious usage for that suggestibility, uh, and how some people could use that for purposes that aren't very, what the word I'm looking for, that would be dishonorable or disingenuous or
Well, I mean, it's certainly possible. It depends, it's a tool, but tools can be used
For good or ill.
by human beings or other beings for whatever reasons. I mean, as a hypnotherapist, I have certain ethical obligations that I follow,
Right.
just like any therapist. Um, but people are often afraid of hypnosis because they think that it's some sort of mind control that can just
Hmm.
totally knock them out. And the movies that, pop culture doesn't help it out anymore because the movies present hypnosis as some sort of magical power. But again, people have to know that it's a collaboration. Nobody
Hmm.
can force you into hypnosis without you knowing it or without, well, I suppose it could be done without you, uh, you know, like if I know that someone has high suggestibility and I want to start suggesting things to them and I know they will accept those suggestions, I could hypothetically do it. I won't ever do it because that goes against my,
Ethics, yes.
ethics. But I guess it could possibly be done. It could be done, but it's like any tool. I mean, a knife can, do surgery to
Good
save
things are
someone's life, but it could
right,
also stab someone to death. So
right,
anything we do has to have ethics with it.
right. Um, gosh, I wish that were more true in our society. Um, so, and this is once again stereotypes, inducing that trance state. So I've seen situations where people take a watch and they move the watch back and forth and they say, concentrate on this. So are there particular techniques that you use to induce the trance state, or does that just vary by the practitioner?
So there are a lot of different techniques to induce trance. I hate the watch because it's just very stereotypical.
It
I
is.
have never used it. I have never seen of anyone that uses it. Primarily because I think because you have to have your eyes open while you're doing that. And I prefer to have my clients close their eyes
Mhm.
because again, it's sort of counterproductive. You want to shut out external stimuli, you want to go within because it's much easier to change your brainwave pattern when you're sort of um, walking away from the external things. So I wouldn't want to dangle anything in front of them while they're externally focused, but yet trying to make them be internally focused. It's kind of
Right.
hard. So I do different techniques. Often I do what's called progressive relaxation, which means you just kind of take the person through their body and you allow them the experience of relaxing and releasing tension from their body. I do, and that usually works because in hypnotherapy because especially after a few sessions, you get trained in it. And so it's the client gets sort of their mind gets trained in it. And so they go really fast. Sometimes when I work with people long enough, we get to a point where I just go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then they're
They're in the
out.
state. Oh,
Yeah, because
wow.
they're already conditioned to it.
Condition.
I don't
Mhm.
have to sort of get them ready. So it's pretty fast. But yeah, there are some people who do different techniques. I'm more comfortable with this one, but yeah, it kind of depends on the practitioner, how they were trained, what particular um, thing was kind of passed down to them.
Mhm. And where did you learn to be a certified hypnotherapist? And maybe what does that mean?
Yeah, so I went to HMI, which is Hypnosis Motivation Institute in California, and a certified. So I have a diploma in as a hypnotherapist. Um, The certification, it depends on, is different from state to state in
Okay.
the United States. There are some states that require specific certification, like I know that Washington State requires one, which is where I'm planning to move to, so I'll have to get
Cool.
it there. Um, and certification is basically they're just verifying all your, credentials, and that you have the the needed level of education and practicum hours and all of that. In other states, it's there is less of a requirement. Usually, we get certified through some sort of organization that monitors, professionals of that kind. So it's kind of different, but yeah, you just maintain your certification every year. Um,
I would guess that that certification process involves so many hours, maybe under the guidance of someone who already is a certified hypnotherapist, so many hours of practicing the trade. Would that be fair to say?
um, yes, as far as I know, you have to go to, a training program. You can't just sort of individually learn it from someone
Right.
privately. That's as far as I know. I'm sure, especially in the states where there's specific certification required. So you have to go to a school, you have to get a certain number of hours of training and a certain number of practicum hours.
As you talk a little bit about the process you use, it really seems similar to meditation. It seems like a
Mhm.
meditational state that you're inducing. Is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, I would say so. Um, I think the difference is, well, there are a couple of differences. In a meditative state, you're kind of listening, hopefully, if you're in a deep meditation, you're just sort of letting go and you're just listening and sort of being there, right? You're not actively searching for information, you're not actively doing anything, you're just being. In a trance, there is not that state of just, the present, of your being. You're actually doing something. So for example, in hypnotherapy, we may be going on a imagery journey where a person is um, finding something, looking for something, being exposed to something, having conversations with some, beings in their mind or whatever. Sometimes we do release work. So I provide guidance as a hypnotherapist, but the person in a trance has to kind of process all of it. It's everything is happening in their mind, but they have to actively participate in it. So where meditation is more of a maybe passive experience, hypnosis is more of an active
Active.
experience.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
So let's delve into the uses of hypnotherapy and how you use it. Let's talk about the typical thing that we run across in Opus. Somebody has an experience with beings that they would refer to as ETs, and they have the old standard missing time kind of thing where they see something, then they kind of blank out, and then their conscious memory comes back in. So talk about what you do in terms of hypnotherapy for somebody like that, and maybe share with us, if you can, some cases that you've dealt with recently where you've helped people use hypnotherapy that way.
So for people who reach out to me with those requests, usually what we do, I don't call it hypnotherapy, I do it regression, right? So, and regression a regression certainly can have a therapeutic component to it if necessary, but it doesn't have to. It can be just sort of information gathering. So, if a person wants to have what I call like an alien regression, right? So, I take them in as the usual regression. I take them into deep state, and then um, I guide them to the first event that they um,
Recall.
recall, but they have to tell me about it before we start, right? Because we talk first. And they and I don't know much about it, but for example, I would know, well, it happened around, when I was, I don't know, 12 years old. It happened at night. I think I saw someone, but I don't know, So I just basically tell them you're going to go to that time when you're 12 years old, and I guide them there. And then we start exploring them. I bring them into that moment, into that room, into that space, wherever they were. And I help ground them into that experience so that in their mind they're fully there, so that they almost forget that they're sitting in my chair, that
Mhm.
they're sort of, I tell them to look around, to see, to notice things that they're seeing, sounds that they're hearing, maybe touch something. I sort of bring them into that moment. And then we begin to explore, what do you see? What do you notice? What happens? Um, and the more they step into it, the more they step into that moment in the past, and they begin to report what they were seeing or what they were experiencing. Um, the magic of hypnosis is that in your mind, there are no limitations. And I use it to the fullest extent that I can. So, what that means is, for example, you know, in our physical bodies, of course, we have limitations. So if for example, you remember seeing some light outside of the window, but um, but that's all you remember. So let's say in the trance, I take them to the window and I say, look outside and see what you see. And they tell me, well, there's some light, but I don't know what the source of it is. In real life, they probably wouldn't be able to physically see what's, maybe the source is on the other side of the house or above the house. They can't actually physically see it, but in their mind they can do whatever they want. So I tell them to float out of the window and float above the house. I tell them that they don't even need to float out of the house. They can just have an awareness. They can expand their awareness and know things that are anywhere in the universe. So they
Mm.
begin to access information that, in their physical body in real life, they couldn't actually physically maybe get access to. And that's where they begin, they can actually, see a ship above the house, or see where that light was coming from, or where things take them. We can, from there, if they see a ship, I mean, I'm not telling them anything. I'm not telling them, oh, well, you might find a ship. Why don't you float above the house? I'm
Right.
not suggesting anything to them. I just tell them that they have the ability to get the information. And so that leads to the next level of information. Let's say if they see a ship, then I invite them, if they are ready to go to the ship, to go there and visit and see what's there. And then sometimes we take a tour around the ship and they point certain things out. Um, Sometimes we interact with, if they were actually taken somewhere and a procedure was done to them, then I would take them to that space and ask them to observe it and to just describe what was happening. Um, what I find most of the time is that we start with fear because it's unknown, it's maybe hard, it's unexplainable, and we are very afraid of things. What I find is that they often move to a deeper understanding of what's happening. They also discover that there is an agreement between them and the beings that they're interacting with. It's not an agreement on a conscious level, but it's an agreement that was made at a subconscious level, uh, between the souls and the consciousnesses of the beings. And they also discover the purpose, the motivation behind what's happening. Sometimes they just become sort of okay with it because they understand why it's being done. And usually there is a positive reason behind it, positive motivation. And sometimes they remember that they are family, that they are um, part of that race, that the beings that are coming to them are their sort of family. And
Family.
so
Interesting.
and there is such deep recognition that they're just like, oh my God, I remember, I know who you are. And it's like a total shift in energy, complete shift in energy. And those are really beautiful. So yeah, I can share a few that were the most profound that I and they're, by the way, posted on my YouTube channel, which is Natalie Candela Hypnotherapist is my YouTube channel, and there is a playlist for alien regressions, so those
Oh,
can be found there. So would you like me to share a few?
sure, sure. That's
Um,
fascinating.
so there was there are two that I really loved the transformation that was actually, can you excuse me 1 second? I'm just gonna walk with the computer because my cat, I don't know if you guys can
Cat,
hear it, but my cat
cat,
is really
cats are
wanting
doing
to
what
get
cats
in.
do. Okay.
And I'm gonna just let her in because I don't want this meowing to disturb. Sorry about that.
Hey, no
So
problem.
there was a gentleman, his name is John, and his session is posted. Um, he came in with a lot of anxiety about the experiences he'd had. He knew he had some sort of um, alien experiences, but he could not understand what they wanted from him,
Hmm.
and he found them very disturbing. Um, and when we did the regression, I think typically in a regression session, I do two types of regressions, but this was the longer type. It's a 4-hour session, and the hypnosis part is usually between 2.5 and 3 hours. So the person that can be in hypnosis for up to 3 hours. Typically in that type of session, we go through 2 past lives because it's usually done for past lives. With him, we visited 4 lives.
Hmm.
Of those, I think, I can't remember now, but I think 2 were past human lives and 2 were past alien lives,
Oh, that's fascinating.
or at least one of them for sure was a past alien life. And this is where I find these are the most interesting cases because this is where they're sort of weaved together.
Right.
Um, so he went through some human lives, and then he went into an alien life, and he realized that this is his family of origin. This is where he he he's coming in, that he did not start out on Earth, that he started out in this other race or place or planet or whatever you call it. Um, Many times, I'm just going to jump out of this for a minute. Many times I have come across alien races that they are so advanced that part of like their work or part of what they do is just stepping into other races to explore. They're
Hmm.
just explorers. One time, one called himself a traveler. They just travel to other experiences. They
Kind of
step
like
into them.
kind of like an explorer in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah. And they become part of the sort of the natives, right? They step into them. And then they feed back the information back to their race, pure sort of knowledge, for the joy of understanding. And so this particular, so John, he found himself in this alien race, um, and and I'm sorry, I can't remember the details now, but he was one of those that, went in to be on Earth, to help Earth. Often they do things to help Earth develop, progress, develop new technologies, develop new understandings. Yesterday, I had a session with a woman who found herself um, in her native alien world, and she came to Earth initially to help them develop agricultural practices. She came to them when we were ancient Egypt kind of time frame to help with agriculture. So he steps into human race. Then he becomes a human. He begins to incarnate here. And usually when aliens step in here, they don't just stay one life. They stay for a long period of time, because then it becomes their whole human sort of karmic pattern. And they also experience learning here. They don't just come in to teach, they're also learning from it. So he's now learning, living here, but he's still connected with his native race.
Mhm.
They're still interacting, and at some point, when I believe it was with him, but if I'm mistaken, forgive me, because I can't remember all the details of the sessions. At some point, he was like, oh my God, I remember now, they're friends or their family, they're like brothers. They are here checking in, they're here maintaining that connection. They miss me and I miss them, and that's why they're here. Um, by the end of the session, his demeanor, his thoughts on the subject made such a turnaround. It went from I hate them, what do they want? I'm suspicious of them, I'm afraid of them, to like being welcoming and being, oh my God, I know who they are, and of course I want to connect with them. And then I had another session, which was a very similar kind of experience, the turnaround that happened. She had her first connection with them when she was a child. She didn't actually remember it consciously. It came out, her conscious awareness was of later in life, but she didn't remember that when she started out, it was young, when she was like, I don't know, 5 or something. And when she first saw them, I believe she was really afraid of them. She saw them like at a playground. She saw them, but nobody else could see them. And she couldn't understand what they wanted or why they kept looking at her. And she didn't want to go to them. And I don't force people to experience things that, are really disturbing to them. But we went through the whole regression, and we went through a couple of things, and things began to shift. And then I took her back to that initial interaction. And by then she remembered that who they were her family. And their job was to remind her, to kind of like say, hey, come on, wake up, time for you to remember who you are, time for you to remember what your mission is. You have to do things here. And we came here to remind you, because you asked them to come and say, hey, wake up. And so by the end of the session, she allowed herself to like embrace them and come in contact with them, because she saw them now as her friends, as her family. instead of some scary things. And so those are, I'm not saying that that's the, 100% of the contacts are like that, but those are the most heartwarming
Yeah,
because,
I think I was mentioning to you a book I've been reading, and we're interviewing one of the authors called Voices of the Cosmos. And one of the things that is brought out in the authors by the author is that many of the alien races who are involved in abductions are not necessarily a negative thing, that they have beneficial aspects of them too. And I found that very surprising because a lot of people wouldn't necessarily say that.
yeah, there's a session that I did with a lady called Marge and her MARG, and her session is also on my YouTube channel.
YouTube channel. Okay.
Yeah, and she has had multiple contacts throughout her life. And this one was interesting because so she was taken to a ship, I think, and they were doing some sort of procedure. And initially she was so distressed by them. Um, and she didn't want to see them. I think she could feel them maybe, but she couldn't actually see them. And when I had her look at them, she said, "Oh my God, they're ugly. They are scary. They're ugly. I hate them. Don't want to see them." And apparently they look like bugs or
They look like
something.
what?
Bugs.
Oh, bugs. Okay.
Yeah,
Insect.
yeah, insects. Um, but towards the end of the session, she came to see because she was talking to them. She kept having a conversation with them. And she didn't really want to very much at first, but
Hmm.
like she eventually was able to have a conversation with them. And yes, they were very much helping her. They were helping the earth, but they also were helping her. They were taking care of her health as well. But they told her that we understand how distressing our look can be to you. And so I think they either they appeared to her as somebody else, I think as her father or something. It was either in that session or another. But they either changed their look or they sort of prevented her from looking at them, from seeing them, because they said, we know that our appearance is distressing.
Disturbing.
We
Hmm.
don't want to, yeah, we don't want to disturb you. So often we are disturbed by just our preconceived notions.
Hmm.
Um, and that stops us. I had a client who came in for a regression, and matter what I said, no matter um, what I suggested he look at or explore, both consciously and in the trance, he maintained that I know they're here for no good, and they're no good, and I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't trust them. Um, they're here to harm us. There's nothing, and he would not even in a trance, consciously, he kept saying that. So he was so insistent on that, so fully invested in that he would not even allow for any kind of exploration. So in the end, he left with the same, belief. I can't wipe it out of his mind with hypnosis. He was 100% invested in the belief. He just wanted to know um, more details about what happened. And in hypnosis, he would keep telling me, well, I remember that this has happened. I said, well, you don't have to rely on what you remember. I'm going to help you, you can go beyond that. You have abilities beyond that. In your mind, you can do other things. And he would refuse to even believe that. He'd say, no, I can't. I can't fly. No, I can't see. I can't float. No, I only, so this is an example of, a clear, I think, evidence that if someone is going to resist, they have 100% power to resist.
Right,
So
because
he
he was
left.
doing that.
Yeah, so he did remember more things in a trance than he remembered consciously, but he stopped himself at every turn, and he was convinced that there was nothing good about any aliens, that everything
Hmm,
about them was bad. And so he left with that conviction, I can't change that.
hmm. Interesting. So I'm seeing a congruence between um, past lives and contact with alien beings. And
Very much.
I've always kind of separated those two things, but it sounds like your experience would say they may not necessarily need to be separated.
Yes, in fact, that's what I'm kind of focusing on that because I'm hoping to write a book one day about that because so if we think about planet Earth, it has a lifespan, right? It started at some point and it's gonna end its life at some point. I mean, it's a long lifespan, but
A
um,
lifespan.
it is a lifespan, has a beginning and an end. I believe that my approach is very spiritual to this. So I believe that as souls, we are eternal. We don't have a beginning and an end. So rationally and logically, if we use our critical thinking, then if a planet has a beginning and an end, then we have to have been somewhere before it began, and we'll have to be somewhere after it ends. Which means that Earth is not our starting point
Hmm,
for any of us. All the people on Earth, by definition, then, or by sort of rational thinking, are aliens to begin with.
hmm.
We are all citizens of the universe,
Universe. Hmm.
and we travel from race to race, from planet to planet, from experience to experience. Now, some of us might step into a physical experience maybe on Earth. I mean, we all kind of decide where we want to start our physical exploration. But so for very few of us, maybe Earth is the sort of the beginning of their physical exploration. I'm not sure. But I think for the vast majority of us, we are not from here. We are from all over the place. There's not one place that you're from. You just also we can have multiple concurrent experiences at the same time. A soul is multidimensional. It can be within multiple places at the same time. So we humans think in very linear terms. There has to be a point at which we begin, that it has to go in this direction and it has to end at some point. But a soul doesn't experience life that way. So what we call aliens and what we call past lives, we think they're separate, but they
But they're
are
not
a lot of
necessarily.
times one and the same. Now, when I talk about past lives, with clients or in terms just for practical purposes, what I imply is human past lives, right?
Hmm.
The past lives on this planet, because they are directly impacting our um, sort of soul journey within this experience on Earth. But very often, alien lives pop up as one of our past lives
Hmm.
because what I'm seeing more and more is that many of us are aliens that came to help Earth, or aliens, which is what Dolores Cannon was also seeing in her research, and her sessions, QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis technique, that's what I do. That's the 4-hour sessions. It's the Laura's Cannon's format. So many of us are aliens that are still on our alien world, in our alien world, but we are also concurrently incarnating on Earth to help Earth evolve, or to learn about human experience, or to just understand what it's about.
Well, if you think about that, that really gives a total different perspective to humans and what our job or what our goal is on this planet. We tend to want to divide everybody into, well, you're part of this group, you're part of that group, but maybe it kind of suggests that maybe we're all part of the same group, or have enough similarities not to focus on those differences. Would that be accurate?
I think it's absolutely accurate. I think the stage of development that humans are in right now, where we not only divide ourselves by, the continents, the cultures, the countries, but also by the color of our skin, by
Right?
the gender. I mean, it is like, it is such level of immaturity in terms
Mm.
of spiritual development. It's like we are toddlers hitting each other with with a plastic shovels on the side of the head, and saying, this is my
Yeah,
sandbox, you get away
yeah.
from here. This is the
Except,
level of immaturity that we're in right now.
except,
What we're
I
Yeah,
was going to
what
say,
we're
well,
heading. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, instead of a plastic shovel, they're nuclear weapons that we want to hit
Yeah,
each other
well,
with. Much more
right,
destructive.
right, of course. Um, but where we're heading is towards recognition that we are galactic citizens, that we
Uh,
are citizens of the universe, and that we're ultimately one. And that, if we think a different color skin is bad, think about, you know, meeting someone who looks like an insect.
right, right.
I mean, that's going to be a little harsher, right?
Yeah.
On your mind. But so, yeah, but that's where we're heading. And I think a lot of aliens are being very staying in the shadows, so to speak, not shadows as in bad, but sort of hidden for now, is because we are not ready. We're not mature enough
Right.
to understand that kind of difference, and but also understand that it's not a difference that means that we're not one. It's not a difference that's supposed to
Divide
cause
us.
fear,
Yeah.
right? Because universe is varied, it's multidimensional. There is so much variety that you have to learn to appreciate variety, not be fearing of variety. And
Mhm.
we are at the moment are still so fearful of the basic, tiny, minute differences between us that are not even differences.
Mhm.
So that's why there's such, you know, we're waiting for contact, but we're not truly yet ready for it. We have to first be okay with our own differences and say we're all really one.
So,
And then be ready for the next step.
so if I came into you and said, um, Natalie, I want to figure out what I've done in past lives. Well, let me just throw a name in here that you may be familiar with. We've interviewed on a couple different occasions Joanne DiMaggio. Are you
Mhm.
familiar with that
I,
person?
I'm sorry, I heard the name, but I don't know. I haven't seen or heard her work.
Wonderful person, wonderful person. And what she gets into is past life, she would call them soul contracts. So
Mhm.
when we come to this plane of existence, we usually hang out with people that we've been in past lives and other lifetimes before. And well, they just tend tend to play different roles than they did in those previous lifetimes. But what you're suggesting is some of those soul contracts could be with alien beings.
Mhm. Yeah.
Do you think that would be true of everybody? Or would there be people that that would not be true of?
I don't think anything is true of everybody because I don't
Yeah,
think there's that level of consistency.
okay.
The universe is again has such variety that it's there's more than we can imagine, right? So I don't think anything is, you know, true for everyone. I think I have heard, and I like the term of a professional human, which means that, you know, once we came to Earth from the beginning, maybe some of us were even involved in creating the planet,
Hmm.
and we have committed to it for the duration or for long haul. I feel that I am one of the professional humans, like you know, like I'm on this planet. I don't have a strong sense of being um, pulled in other directions, like I'm here. That's not to say, I mean, I am sure I have been on, you know, in other races and other planets. I'm sure I'm alien to the planet as well, because, you know, I came here from somewhere. But once I'm here, I'm here. But there are others that travel back and forth.
Hmm.
You know, there are others that were not here from the beginning. They came in much later. So everybody has a very different journey. Everybody has a different path, a different story. Um, what I find that most people that come here, because it's a very difficult place, it's a harsh place.
Yeah, I
Earth
would say.
is Earth is a tough school. But once we come here, we stay here for, at least for a while, for a couple of lives, um, because it takes time to just get used to it and kind of learn to navigate in such low density. And then the lessons kind of, because it's so hard, it's easy to make a mistake. And so we kind of have to find our feet, you know, like it, and just kind of learn to navigate things. But the more you stick around, the easier it gets to navigate. So I feel like I've sort of, to some extent, figured it out a little bit.
Uh-huh.
But I think I've been here for a long while. So I don't know if that I'm sorry, I forgot your question. I remember you said, is that for everyone? But I can't remember.
Well, I guess I was wondering about Joanne's comments about a soul contract, why
Oh,
we come here, who
right.
we hang out with. Does that just change? Do people like, does my ex-wife, was that my dad in another lifetime? And that's my thinking. I haven't thought in
Yeah.
terms of well, like the alien aspect of it, but
Yeah. So that's a great question. So I believe that we travel in soul groups, soul
right,
families, and soul groups are, or families are just the beings that you're somehow closely connected to. You feel that you want to be with them. It may be that you have shared interests. It may be that, you know, that you just your love for each other is so immense that you just want to stay close together.
right,
And so those soul groups travel through lives together. However, you're not sometimes somebody comes into your life that is not from your soul group. It's not that you're just sort of marinating in the same, you know, group of whatever.
for people, okay,
Yeah, and also not everyone in your soul group is necessarily always with you at the same time in every life. I mean, there are some people, some that come in with you, some that are still on the other side, and they serve as your spirit guides through that life. So it's alternating. But the contracts, yes, in my regressions, I always check on the contracts. Now, contract is a term that may be misinterpreted because contracts can be broken as far as spirit is concerned. You
hmm,
have free will, and that takes precedence over any contract you agree to. Um, but these are just agreements. Let's call them agreements among loving friends.
hmm,
They are, that's what a contract is. They are, for example, you have a parent who has made your life difficult, um, withheld love, diminished you, put you down, whatever. And so a person comes to me for hypnotherapy, not for regression, but for hypnotherapy. What I help them look at is, because I immediately see that if this person had a significant impact on your life, they didn't just accidentally fall out of the sky. That is, there is some sort of agreement there, okay? Because things are not accidental here. So what I look for is, why would that pattern be created? What is the agreement between souls? Because even though it looks like this person is just mean and nasty and hurtful to you, on the spirit side, they are all love. They would not want to hurt you. So what is it that they are doing? Why are they doing these things to you? And usually it's not to destroy you, because the spirit would never, ever want to do that. Usually it's to push you towards learning
Growth?
something,
Yeah,
growth,
growing,
towards
yeah.
realizing something. So what I help my clients look at is, okay, set aside the pain, set aside, because it's all real, and yes, you were hurt, but what would it be pushing you towards? Is it towards realizing that you're powerful, that you deserve love, that you're worthy of self-esteem, and that you don't have to rely on other people for approval? What is it that you're getting out of it? So typically, and people figure out what the lesson is. Typically, when we look at people that have hurt us in our life, we want to think of them as enemies, or as, just somebody we don't ever want to be in touch with again. But when I take people that have issues like that and I take them into regression, and I sometimes take them in between lives, I take them to meet the soul of that person that hurt them. They see it completely differently. Like
Right.
with aliens, they begin to have that recognition of, oh my God, they love me. They did this so that I could learn
Or
more.
grow, right,
Yes. And
right.
so those are the people that we have contracts with. Contracts are not only, or agreements, they're not only made with people that we consider loving and, supportive. They can also be with sort of foes in our lives, because as long as there's something that we get out of that connection and interaction.
Well,
Um,
I've always maintained in terms of life's lessons, you never learn a lesson from something that's easy. You learn a
mhm.
lesson from something that's challenging and makes you work at it and maybe creates images like, why did I do that? So yeah, I guess I understand that a bit. So I want to be conscientious of our time here. And I really appreciate the time that you're spending with us today and previously.
Sure.
And what I'm kind of thinking about is this, Natalie. So I'm thinking of the average person who's at Shopko today shopping, and this discussion is not anywhere on their radar screen. And how important it is to make discussions like this on people's radar screens, because it's a learning opportunity for them, certainly a learning opportunity for me. So I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us and opening my eyes to regressions, uh, hypnosis, and it's just a pleasure to have you on the show. So, are there any kind of final thoughts we might want to throw in here about past lives or hypnosis that you think we haven't covered that might be important to make a statement about before we leave today's discussion?
Um, I think the final thought I would leave people with is that critical thinking is very important. It's a good thing,
Very.
but also curiosity and open mind are very important. And so, hypnosis is not meant to be dangerous at all. It's meant to be a supportive tool. It is natural. It doesn't leave any negative side effects like drugs. And it's if it doesn't feel right, then you shouldn't do it. You know, like with anything, always rely on your intuition to have discernment, and on your critical thinking to have discernment. But um, you know, the thing that you said, that it's important to bring this to people, to make it available to people. I think that once a person intuitively begins to search for answers, they begin to find them. Like they begin to get exposed to these things, right? And there are a lot of people on the planet now that are searching for things beyond what was available previously. And so it's not that we have to push this information to them, but it has to be available. And once a person is ready to search, then the information will present itself to them. Excuse me. And so I would welcome people to just have a curious, open mind and search for answers, and find things that intuitively feel aligned to them.
I think that's what this program is all about,
Mhm.
helping people search for answers. Natalie, thanks so much for being on the program again.
Of course.
If you move to Washington State, let's hang out. That'd be
Absolutely.
fun to do. So,
Absolutely.
do you have an area in mind that you're looking at, or just
It'll
whatever
be
presents
close to
itself?
Seattle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as someone who lives in Olympia, which is 60 miles from Seattle,
Yeah.
pretty nice place, you know. So,
Yes.
anyway,
Absolutely.
thanks for being on the show, and
Of
we'll
course.
probably see you on some OPUS meeting in the near future.
Yep.
All right, goodbye.
Bye.